And what is it about envy that causes such a problem? What does envy do? Why should we avoid envy? Well, let me give you a first reason. The first reason is that envy causes conflict. Envy causes conflict. If you look at James chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, we see this idea of envy causing conflict. It says here, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something but don't get it. You kill and covet, but you cannot have what you want. You quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures." This idea of envy causes quarrels and conflict and struggle. And I don't know about you, but I don't need more conflict. Is anybody out there that's like, I need more conflict, bring it on, right? Even people who create conflict are all the time saying, nope, I don't need drama. I don't like being around drama. And that's something that we see a lot, is that as we let envy creep in, we have this idea of conflict that follows. And it can happen all over the place. Maybe it happens in a relationship in your family. A brother or sister you have some sort of envy of since you were growing up, or maybe it happens when a parent passes away and they leave something to one but not the other, and now all of a sudden those brothers don't talk anymore. Why would you let something create that conflict? Maybe it happens in your marriage. You get jealous of someone's time or what they get to do, or how their life isn't the same as yours, even in your marriage, and it causes conflict in your marriage to have that envy. Maybe it causes conflict with friends. We see this in students and young adults sometimes when there's a pretty girl or a handsome boy and two friends start liking them, and all of a sudden the two friends aren't friends anymore, right? And they let that envy divide them and create conflict. Maybe it's in your workplace. Someone got that promotion. Someone got that raise that you should have gotten. And now you've got an issue with them. Maybe it's in your neighborhood because someone got that car, or someone got that landscaping, or whatever it is that they got. And now, they parked the car outside of the garage again just to show it off to me. And there's conflict there. And it can be just a tough, hard thing. And it rips us apart. And even if it doesn't destroy the relationship, at the very least it causes headaches and stress. Those aren't good things. We don't want headaches and stress. We have enough of them already. And unfortunately, we're not immune to this as a church. This can happen within the church. You come in here and you see somebody with this or somebody with that, or somebody who gets to do this or gets to do that and gets their way, and all of a sudden envy creeps in. And it's a huge issue. And it causes relational conflict. There is nothing that can destroy a small group or a church or a ministry with quite the same zeal that relational conflict can. There are other things that can destroy it, but there's a special way that relational conflict does it that's messy. So even if not for yourself, even if not to make things easier on you and better for you, for the church, for us, help us. Because this conflict is hard and damaging, and it keeps us from being who God has called us to be. So help us by just running from that envy as soon as it starts to crop up. Now, there's a quick note that I want to add here before we go on, because a lot of you are like, okay, I won't envy people, but there's this other thing you're holding on to, and I want to make sure we're not holding on to it, because sometimes we get this idea that it's okay to want people to envy us, right? It's what those ads were saying at the beginning, like, if you have this, then you'll be the envy of the town. I hate those ads, because what they do is they convince you that it's a good thing to have somebody else in a position that's going to cause conflict with you. Why would you contribute to that conflict by creating that envy? And some people do it purposefully. I've got to have this, I've got to have that. That's why we pay more for some things than they're worth, even though there are a ton of them out there and they're not even that high quality, but they've gotten this like snob status, right? So that if we have them, that shows our class, right? They actually have a name for them. They're called Veblen goods, named after an economist who talked about this back around the turn of the last century. Because it's a huge process that we go through where we look at it and we say, oh, I got to have that. Because then people are going to see and they will envy me. But you're creating conflict and it's not healthy. It's not good. Another problem that we run into with this is that envy wastes time and effort. Envy wastes time and effort. I want you to see this as we look back at something that was written by Solomon. Solomon was a king who was told by God that he could ask for what he wanted, and he asked for wisdom. And it was granted wisdom beyond measure, wisdom more than other kings, wisdom more than other people, wisest man to ever live. And as we look at this idea, he wrote this book of Ecclesiastes, and he talks in it about all these different things that we search after. He talks about how we work and toil. He talks about how we save up riches. He talks about how we look for political success or popularity. He talks about all these different things that we chase after, and he concludes that all of it is meaningless. It's a chase after the wind. You're chasing after something you can never catch. What you think these things are going to give you, they won't give you. And it's really a meaningless chase because you're chasing after stuff that doesn't last. That just doesn't last. Now, Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 6. You'll see it up here, verses 19 and 20, when he talked about how we shouldn't store up for ourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but we should store up for ourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not corrupt and thieves do not break in and steal. The stuff that we fight for, the stuff that we get envious of, is stuff that's not going to last. We should be focused on stuff that is going to last, that's eternal. Paul tells us a couple of different times that we should fix our eyes on what is unseen rather than what is seen, that we should set our mind on things above and not on earthly things, that this idea of focusing on all these things that we become envious of, it's not the right focus. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of our effort. And that's a problem for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's not what we were designed to focus on. Now, before we get there, I did almost miss. We do have an exception to this. There's a way in which there is something lasting that we can become envious of, and we're still wasting our time and effort. And what it is something that we're particularly good at as Christians. We take things that are good and find a way to kind of come up with a twisted way to mess things up. And what we've done is we've taken the way that God is choosing to use people and the degree to which God is choosing to use people, and we've become envious of it. We say, God should be using me like this person. God should have gifted me this way. God should have done this. And we get envious of the way God's using someone else or the way God's gifting someone else. Even speaking here this morning, I get on Facebook and a friend of mine's like, oh, my message went great and people didn't throw things at me. Please don't. But by the end, like there can be envy that creeps up in things like that. And what happens when we do that is we've not only wasted our time and effort, because that's not what God called you to do. God called you to do the good that He had created you to do, not what He created them to do. And the way we're supposed to work together is as a unit, as a team. The biblical picture is as a body where all the parts are important and all the parts matter and all of them play an important role. And what happens is when we allow envy to frustrate us because we're not this other person we want to be, not only is it wasting our time and effort, but it's counterproductive. It's counterproductive to the mission that we're on as the church to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, to share that gospel with people, because we're not doing our part. We're so focused on what we aren't called to do that we're not doing what we are called to do. And we're not getting that part done, and the group is never as effective as it could be otherwise. An example of this that I see in a microcosm is when you go on a mission trip. And I saw this on one of our recent trips to Haiti. What can happen is you go on this mission trip, and I'll tell you, a lot of the guys in Haiti that I run into are amazingly talented men. There's a guy, Almondo, who's a friend of mine. Man he can sing, he can cook, he built his own house that should be on HGTV. He's a speaker, he's personable, he's got like 90 billion Facebook friends, whatever it is you want to envy about him. This guy's awesome. And what can happen is sometimes you get down there and people are like, well, there's this talented person or this person came along on the team, and what do I have to offer? And you start to think that if you were more like this or more like that, then this team would be better. And God messed up. God made a mistake when he brought me on this trip. And I've had that happen on one of my recent trips even. And what happens there is that when you're focusing on who you're not, instead of doing what God has called you to be, it weakens your effectiveness until you, by the end of the trip, you always get to a point where you see, oh, God used me here. God did this. This experience was used this way. And we see where we're more effective when we're all working together in our strengths and in our weaknesses as a body, as a team, working together. So as we look at this idea, we as a church talk about this in our classes, and we say a couple of things that we want you guys to know. The first one is here at Covenant, every member is a minister. Every member is a minister. You are all called to ministry, not just Terry, not just the elders, not just the staff. We are all called to be in this together. And then when we get beyond that, a lot of the reason that's important is because every believer is highly gifted in some area. Every believer is highly gifted in some area. There's something that God has made you for. There's something God has created you to do. There's something he is enabling you to do. Every believer is highly gifted in some area. And then after that, we have to know that every task matters. That all the little things that build up into the overall direction and movement of the church matter. They're important, and we need everybody to fill all of those roles so that we can move into what God has called us to be, not only with this mission of spreading the gospel, but even with the specific mission here of growing passionate followers of Jesus Christ who serve all people. We want that to happen, and this envy can get in the way of that, and it can be counterproductive as we look at having that happen. All right, another problem that we run into is that envy consumes you. Envy consumes you. What happens is that it comes in and it just eats away at you. The Bible talks about it this way in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 30, right in the middle of your Bible. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 30 says, "A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones." Did you hear that? A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. It eats away at you. It tears you down. It consumes you. And it consumes your time and effort that we talked about. It consumes your energy. And it keeps you from being able to do what God has called you to do. There's a group that I had the song by them stuck in my head the whole time I was getting this ready. It's a Christian rap group of guys called 116. And they have a song called Envy. And if you can listen to rap without your ears bleeding, you should check it out sometime. I can. It's awesome. I love it. But maybe not. At least read the lyrics online. And one of the lyrics to this that kept going through my head is, "Envy is sin and it will take charge." Envy is sin and it will take charge. It'll grab you. It'll take control. It will consume you if you let it. And it won't just even do it by itself. See, first of all, it'll do it because it keeps you from doing things you were supposed to do. You may be familiar with this idea that every yes is a no to something else. Anytime that you say yes to one thing, because there are so many things that you could do, you're saying no to something else. Some of those choices are easy, some are harder. And here we run into that concept as well. When you say yes to envy, you are saying no to what God has prepared you to do. Did you hear that? When you say yes to envy, you're saying no to what God has prepared you to do, what God has created you to do. Because the envy takes your time. It takes your energy. And you don't have that energy left to serve him in ministry. You don't have that energy left to reach that neighbor. You don't have that energy left to be who God has called you to be and created you to be. Because every yes is a no to something else. And you need to You need to think about that as you let envy kind of come in and grab you and control you. But envy also can consume you by the other things it allows in. It opens the door to a lot of other things. I want us to look together at a verse here in James chapter 3, verse 16. We were close to it a second ago. This is just a little bit above the James 4 passage that we looked at. What it says in James 3:16, it says, "For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every kind of evil practice." There you find disorder and every evil practice. These things open the door to all sorts of things. When you start to envy, it opens the door to you hating. It opens the door to you lying and deceiving and manipulating. It opens the door to all sorts of things that you're going to lead into, because envy doesn't just kind of stay inside of you. It doesn't just kind of stay an attitude. It leads to actions. It leads to a change in the way that you interact with people, and it causes